Marcus's phone call came late at night. On the other end, I heard Marcus's muffled grunts and Tiffany's moans. Tiffany's voice was broken and breathless. "You're so naughty. Is this the kind of excitement you were talking about?" My stomach lurched with disgust, and I hung up the phone call. The next day, Marcus was unfazed by my questions. "What's wrong? Jealous? If you had a little passion in bed, I could rekindle the fire we once had." Later, I found a much younger man who was even more passionate than he was in his prime, but he was driven mad with jealousy. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Marcus, who claimed to be on a business trip, called in the middle of the night. The moment I answered, Marcus's muffled grunts and Tiffany's moans came from the other end. I couldn't help but tremble, and my phone almost slipped from my hand. From the phone, I heard the sound of them entwined and flirting, utterly unbearable. Tiffany's voice was broken and breathless, saying between gasps, "You're so naughty. Is this the kind of excitement you were talking about? Looks like Marcus has been holding out at home. Grace can't satisfy you." Before she could finish, Tiffany's shriek came again. Then, a familiar voice spoke. "This is punishment for not focusing." Tiffany seemed determined to get an answer, asking repeatedly, "Come on, tell me, Marcus, who do you like more in bed, me or Grace? You have to pick one today." Marcus, uncharacteristically patient, actually answered her. But his words made me feel as if I were plunged into an ice-cold cellar. "She's utterly boring, nowhere near as good as you are. I'd gladly die in your arms." Suddenly, there were a few clear sounds of playful smacks, followed by Tiffany's giggles. "Brother, lift me higher. I love it, I really love it." I clapped a hand over my mouth, my chest tight, my stomach churning. I quickly pressed disconnect on the phone and ran to the restroom. Their outrageous noises echoed in my ears. I dry heaved for a long time before I could finally compose myself. I splashed water on my face, looked at my haggard reflection in the mirror, and slumped to the floor, breaking down in tears. If I hadn't heard it with my own ears, I would never have believed that the man who had vowed to love me forever and build a family together, was now getting hot and heavy with someone else in bed. The next day, Marcus came home. Seeing me on the sofa, he approached as if nothing had happened, embracing and kissing me as usual. "Grace, I'm home. Did you miss me?" At the thought of last night's events, I felt a wave of nausea. I pushed him away and rushed to the restroom. He seemed startled by my reaction. He thoughtfully poured me some water and came closer, asking with concern, "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" I turned and looked at his face, full of feigned concern, incredulous at how someone could act so nonchalant. I suppressed my emotions and asked, "Why was your business trip so long this time?" Marcus replied with an apologetic expression, "I'm sorry, Grace. The unromantic clients made some last-minute demands, so I was delayed a few days. It won't happen again." As he spoke, he leaned in, affectionately nuzzling my face and whining, "You have no idea how much I've missed you all these days. It's all those unromantic clients, always making me work overtime and keeping me from my Grace." Listening to the lies he'd prepared for me, a chill ran through me. All I could think of were his words from last night, "She's utterly boring." He didn't realize how obvious the hickeys on his neck were. For a moment, I wondered if he'd left the marks on purpose, to experience what he called excitement. I stared at the red marks on his neck and sneered, "Did your overtime extend into the bedroom? That must have been exhausting, right? Is your back aching badly?" Marcus's smile froze instantly, but he still pretended not to understand. "Grace, what are you talking about? I don't understand." I tugged at his collar with a smile, scoffing, "Next time you're cheating, remember to clean up properly. The hickeys on your neck and the lipstick stains on your collar are glaringly obvious. Do you take me for a fool?" Marcus's face darkened when he was exposed. I watched him with a cold smirk. "Or did you intentionally leave it there, just for your so-called excitement?" Marcus's smile completely vanished. He didn't argue or explain, simply asking calmly, "How did you know?" His expression didn't seem feigned, and I quickly pieced things together. I figured the girl on the outside wasn't content with being hidden, so she deliberately exposed everything to me. But, with his efforts to conceal the truth, disgusted me even more. "Don't you check your phone call records? Last night, you deliberately called me to make me watch your live show. I thought you did it on purpose? So I'd know how boring I am." I heavily emphasized the word boring. Marcus's face turned utterly grim, and I no longer had the heart to keep up the pretense with him. I turned to walk to the bedroom, but he grabbed me. I thought he would be angered and embarrassed by my accusations, but instead, he looked completely relaxed. "It's good that you know," he said. "It saves me the trouble of pretending. Aren't you boring? lying in bed like a log, giving no reaction at all. If you can't give me pleasure, isn't it okay for me to find it elsewhere? Don't worry, I'm just having some fun, I won't bring her home. If you don't like it, I can break it off with her. He said it as nonchalantly as if he were talking about eating or drinking. I was stunned by his dismissiveness. Gritting my teeth, I said, Marcus, you are truly disgusting. He completely disregarded my angry words, instead smiling openly, gripping my wrist so tightly it hurt. What's wrong? Jealous? If you had a little passion in bed, I could rekindle the fire we once had. Infuriated by his shamelessness, I slapped him, then threw the prepared divorce papers in his face. Marcus, let's get a divorce. From now on, you can find whatever excitement you want. Marcus's face darkened. Grace, what are you doing? I told you I wouldn't bring her home to affect our lives. Can't you just turn a blind eye? Wouldn't it be better if we just pretended nothing happened? I couldn't understand how he could so matter-of-factly utter such ridiculous words, asking me to pretend nothing had happened. No. Every single second I spend with you makes me sick. He warned me with a sneer, are you sure? If I sign, you won't have a chance to turn back. His arrogance was so entitled, as if he were certain I wouldn't dare leave him. Yes, 3 years of secret admiration, 7 years of a relationship. I'd known him for 10 years and loved him for 10 years. Everyone knew how deeply I loved him. I gave up the chance to study abroad for him, retired to be a stay-at-home spouse for him, and he promised to love me forever. But now, my love for him had become his tool for blackmail. Reflecting on 10 years of deep affection, then looking at his cold warning now, I found it utterly ironic. This was his promises to love me forever and treat me like a princess. My sincerity had been trampled on, utterly crushed. I was completely disillusioned with him. I won't regret it. Sign the papers. Marcus paused for a moment, then chuckled. All right, remember you're the one filing for divorce, not me betraying you. Don't regret it later. As soon as I returned to the room to pack, I heard him make a phone call to the girl who'd been enjoying excitement with him. Tiffany, where are you? Are you free? Marcus deliberately put her on speakerphone, speaking loudly, as if to provoke me. Soon, Tiffany's surprised voice came through. I'm free. If wants me, I'm always free. Shall we meet at our usual spot? Marcus chuckled, forget the usual spot, come to my home. Huh. Then you always wanted to come to my house? Tiffany seemed a little surprised. Huh? Isn't Grace home? Marcus deliberately looked at me and said, there's no Grace anymore. You won't have a Grace from now on. I suppressed the pain in my heart, pulled my suitcase, and left. I walked along the street for a very long time before finally breaking down in sobs. This was the man I'd loved for 10 years, and he was retaliating against me in such a cruel way. Perhaps I was wrong from the very beginning. 3 on the day of the divorce, Marcus brought along Tiffany. She sized me up with a curious expression, her eyes revealing unconcealed disdain and triumph, as if to say, old woman, you still lost, didn't you? I was also observing her. Dressed in a sexy, form-fitting outfit that accentuated her fiery figure, her makeup was exquisite and beautiful. She leaned into Marcus's embrace, a victorious smile playing on her lips. She was provoking me. So this is Grace. She glanced at Marcus, then put on an annoyed expression. Oh, I forgot. Not for long. Then she deliberately scrutinized me from head to toe before sneering. Grace is just as Marcus said, boring, stiff, and tasteless. Grace, when you get older, you should learn more from younger people. Old things are always the first to be phased out. People are no exception. I naturally heard her sarcasm, but I had no desire to argue with them. I took the wedding ring from my bag and handed it to Marcus. Here, take it back. Now we owe each other nothing. Marcus didn't react. Instead, Tiffany excitedly took it and slipped it onto her finger. Wow, it's so beautiful. Doesn't it look perfect on me? Tiffany, beaming with joy, held her hand out to Marcus. Only then did Marcus react, grabbing Tiffany's hand and taking the ring off. Tiffany's eyes reddened with an aggrieved look, but then Marcus lovingly ruffled her hair. This is an old model. It's not good enough for you. You'll have something better later. With that, he tossed the ring into the trash can, then embraced Tiffany, said farewell forever, and walked away. I instinctively wanted to retrieve the ring from the trash can. But as I knelt by the trash can, preparing to reach in, Marcus's indifferent face reappeared in my mind. My heart ached incessantly, and tears flowed uncontrollably. I fiercely cursed myself in my heart. Grace, have some dignity. Why would you pick up discarded trash? Lost and distraught, I wandered aimlessly on the street, then ducked into the poet. I poured glass after glass of alcohol down my throat, but besides the burning in my throat and stomach, I felt no relief whatsoever. Who said alcohol can drown sorrows? What a liar. Soon, the drink in my glass was gone. I called out to the bartender, "Another drink, please." The bartender seemed reluctant, quietly advising me, "Miss, you've had too much. And drinking so fast, you can't even appreciate the characteristics of my drinks." Before he could finish, the emotions I'd suppressed for so long erupted. Now I can't even drink? Is it because I'm old? Or because I'm too boring? I covered my face, sobbing uncontrollably, startling the young bartender. The manager brought the bartender over to apologize to me. The bartender even specially prepared a drink as an apology. "This drink is called Blind." I looked up blankly, only to see the bartender hastily explain, "It refers to your husband, not you." I actually thought he wasn't wrong. What else was I but blind? For the next morning, I couldn't remember how I got home. My head was throbbing fiercely. Recalling how I had made a scene while drunk at the Poet yesterday, I suddenly felt embarrassed. I made a special trip to that bar to apologize to the bartender who had suffered undeserved trouble because of me. Unfortunately, I didn't see the bartender. Just as I was about to ask the manager for his contact information, I ran into Marcus. Well, isn't it Grace? Freshly divorced and already at the Poetess. Eking pleasure and fun. I looked towards the voice and saw Marcus, with Tiffany in his arm, sitting in a booth. Their table was laden with drinks, clearly having been there for a while. Marcus glared at me with a grim face and said coldly, "Grace, you're here harassing me, aren't you? What, regretting it so soon? I warned you, once we're divorced, it won't be easy to turn back." A flicker of apprehension crossed Tiffany's face, then she deliberately hugged Marcus's neck and pouted, "With me, does Big Brother still want to go back?" Marcus lovingly kissed Tiffany's cheek. How could I? How could she compare to you? The atmosphere between them grew increasingly awkward. I didn't want to watch them flaunt their affection here, so I turned to leave, but Marcus grabbed me. "Grace, this is my final warning. Stop your schemes and stop harassing me." Without waiting for my defense, he embraced Tiffany and strode away. I almost laughed in anger and ordered a table full of drinks to suppress my fury. The more I thought about how arrogant Marcus and that pair of scoundrels were, the angrier I became. With the alcohol going to my head, I boldly hired a male escort. When the manager brought a group of people, I was already quite tipsy. At a glance, I couldn't clearly see anyone's face, but without exception, every one of them had an impressive physique, exuding immense vitality. As I hesitated, I suddenly caught sight of a figure that seemed somewhat familiar. Without a second thought, I pointed to that person. "I want him." The manager seemed a bit conflicted, but the man himself willingly agreed and sat beside me. Looking at the familiar face before me, I asked with a smile, "Are you still doing this?" The man before me was none other than the bartender who had prepared the blind drink for me yesterday. The bartender shrugged helplessly. "Gotta make money, right? You have to try everything." He looked at me, his eyes also sparkling with amusement. "Grace, are you here Oh, drink your sorrows away again today? Don't tell me it's still because of your blind ex-husband?" My thoughts exposed, I instinctively denied, "What? Can't I drink for no reason?" He didn't press further, simply curved his eyes into a smile and replied, "You can." It was then that I noticed the man before me had beautiful eyes. Even though they were full of smiles, there was no hint of mockery, a gentleness that made me unconsciously want to draw closer. Realizing my absurd thoughts, I shook my head, silently calling myself crazy. He thought I was uncomfortable and brought me a glass of water. "Drinking too much alcohol is bad for your health, you should drink less." His clear, gentle voice brushed my heartstrings like a feather, and the grievances suppressed deep in my heart suddenly burst forth. The stranger before me gave me an inexplicable sense of security, allowing me to pour out all my grievances. He didn't seem annoyed, just listened patiently, occasionally mentioning a thing or two about himself. That's how I learned he was a student working his way through school. Whether it was Marcus's provocation or the inexplicable connection I felt with the man before me, I pulled his hand as if possessed by a strange impulse. "Aren't you trying to make money? Spend the night with me." The man seemed startled by me, remaining silent for a long time. I also realized how absurd I was being and quickly corrected myself. "Never mind me, I'm drunk." Okay. This time, it was my turn to be startled. I could hardly believe my ears. Then, the man before me suddenly pulled me into his arms and whispered in my ear, "I said I'm taking this job. Is going to back out?" It had come to this. Wouldn't backing out make me a coward? The young man put his arm around me and we went to a nearby hotel. The moment we entered, he pinned me against the door, leaning in close. As I felt his breath draw near, a strange panic welled up inside me, and I instinctively turned my head away. The young man missed. He whispered in my ear, "Grace, are you having second thoughts?" His voice held a hint of hurt, and I turned to look at his reddened eyes, completely losing my resistance. Seeing no reaction from me, the young man curved his lips into a smile, leaned down, and gently touched his lips to mine. It was light as a feather, fleeting, and gone before I had time to savor it. I stared at him blankly, but he chuckled softly, "Grace, you're so cute. You agreed, so no backing out halfway." He suddenly lifted me into his arms. I couldn't help but gasp, instinctively wrapping my arms tightly around his neck. The young man, pleased, kissed my cheek. "Is that better? But there's one thing I should tell you first." I looked at him curiously. He leaned into my ear and whispered, "Once we start, I won't stop easily." He placed me on the bed and leaned over me. The panic in my heart still made me push against his chest. I said with a trembling voice, "I'm very boring." Undeniably, Marcus's shadow still loomed large over me, making me doubt myself at times. He suddenly chuckled. "Grace, don't worry. The customer is always right, I'm here to serve you." With that, he let go of all restraint, our breaths mingling until we could no longer tell them apart. Young people certainly have stamina. He kept going for half the night, not letting up. Not only was his stamina impressive, but he was very creative. Many times, I was embarrassed and wanted to refuse, but he charmed me into it. In the heat of passion, he held me tight, coaxing me to call out his name. Liam. A beautiful name. And so, with each repeated call, we reached the pinnacle of intimacy. 6 The next day, I opened my eyes to see Liam sleeping soundly, holding me tightly. I couldn't help but curse myself for my recklessness. I actually slept with a male escort, and a student working his way through school at that. I wanted to slap myself twice. Liam, fast asleep, had his eyes tightly closed, a slight upward curve at the corner of his lips, as if having a wonderful dream. But now that I was awake, all I wanted was to disappear. I carefully slipped out of Liam's arms, despite the soreness in my body, and then took out all the cash I had and placed it on the bedside table. The thought of my absurd night with Liam filled me with regret. How could I take advantage of a student working his way through school? I'm a beast. I fled in haste, only to run into them again, Marcus and Tiffany, in the hotel lobby. "Grace, what are you doing here?" The moment Tiffany saw me, a flicker of wariness crossed her eyes. "Grace, did you really follow us all the way to the hotel? Are you still hung up on Marcus? You and Marcus are divorced, so just stop harassing him." She deliberately reminded Marcus about our divorce. As expected, Marcus's face darkened a few shades when he heard her. Seeing the two of them intimately huddled together, checking out at the front desk, it wasn't hard to guess what they had been up to last night. But I had no desire to interact with him. I walked straight to the front desk and told the staff I was extending the stay for another day. Liam was sleeping soundly, it was better not to disturb him. Marcus, completely ignored, looked furious. He grabbed me. "Grace, what exactly do you want? You were the one who wanted the divorce, and now you're the one harassing me endlessly? Didn't I make myself clear enough? There's no chance for us anymore." Before he could finish, a hand appeared, grabbed Marcus's wrist, and pushed it away. "Excuse me, but you might be mistaken." The familiar voice made me turn around. Liam, fully dressed, stood behind me, his arm around my waist. He nuzzled into my neck and softly said, "Grace, why are you up so early? You didn't even wake me." His usually upright collar was deliberately open, revealing a glaring hickey on his neck. Marcus narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing us. I knew Marcus well and could tell he was in a terrible mood. "Who is he?" Liam had quite a talent for being subtly provocative. He moved closer to me and shot Marcus a challenging glance. "Who am I? Can't you tell? I belong to Grace." Marcus's face completely darkened. Tiffany, however, didn't seem to notice his mood and kept trying to fan the flames. "Grace is truly amazing, finding someone new so quickly. She was probably already flirting around with others before the marriage." "Shut up." Tiffany was cut off before she could finish, her eyes instantly welling up, but Marcus had no mind to comfort her at that moment. He glared at me, gritting his teeth. "Grace, you really outdid yourself." Without a glance at the teary-eyed Tiffany beside him, he turned and walked away. Tiffany, seeing this, shot me a venomous glare. "Grace, do you think this will win Marcus back? You're deluding yourself." With that, she turned and ran after Marcus. The continuous commotion left me feeling exhausted, and combined with last night's antics, my legs felt weak. Fortunately, Liam caught me. "Are you okay?" I glanced at him, then pushed him away, apologizing sincerely. Yesterday. I lost my head. I'm so sorry. Let's just forget about it. With that, I turned and ran. He seemed to say something, but my mind was in such turmoil at the time that I didn't hear it clearly. From that day on, I never went to the poet again, nor did I see Liam. I treated that night with Liam as a dream, believing I would never cross paths with him again in my life. But I never imagined the world was so small. He appeared before me again, standing beside my beloved professor. With his usual smiling eyes, he obediently said, "Hello, Grace. I'm Liam. 7. I originally studied art and had achieved a fair amount of success in my professional field. Later, because of Marcus, I retired to be a stay-at-home spouse. At the time, he pleaded with me, Grace, your work is too demanding. I can take care of you. I was reluctant at first, but he wore me down, suggesting we try for a bab. Why and hoping to build a happy little family together, to be competent and responsible parents. That's when I finally compromised. I not only gave up the opportunity to study abroad but also a promising career. Yet, I never expected it would all culminate in being called an old woman and stiff and boring. It was utterly ironic. Fortunately, I stayed in touch with Professor. She not only helped me find a job but also allowed me to sell my paintings on consignment at the gallery, which provided significant financial security for my life. Professor's gallery was holding an exhibition, and she invited me to attend. The moment I arrived at the entrance, I saw a familiar face. Professor. The greeting got stuck in my throat. Professor, however, came forward, took my hand, and asked about my situation, then enthusiastically introduced the young man beside her. This is your younger man, Liam. He's doing his graduate studies with me now and has some talent. Liam didn't demur, stating frankly, only a little? Professor seemed used to his mannerisms, chuckling as she gestured at him, then turned to me and said, he's a little less talented than you, though. I smiled and nodded. Suddenly, a slender hand appeared before me. I looked up and saw Liam, his smile still dazzling. Hello, Grace. I'm Liam. I managed to suppress the panic in my heart, extending my hand. Hello, I'm Grace. Suddenly, I felt Liam's grip on my hand tighten. I looked up at him, but he released his hand, his expression as if nothing had happened. I've long heard Professor speaks of a star student. I'm glad we finally met today. I hope you'll guide me in the future, Grace. After some polite exchanges, we followed Professor on a tour of the gallery, but I was still absorbed in my recent encounter with Liam and couldn't fully focus. I couldn't believe the coincidence. The male escort I'd slept with was Professor's student. My guilt intensified. However, Liam didn't seem to intend to recognize me in public just then. I rubbed the hand he had just shaken, feeling a sense of relief, but also a strange hint of disappointment. It wasn't until I bumped into someone ahead of me that I snapped back to reality. I quickly apologized, and then a voice, tinged with amusement, came from above me. No worries. It was then I realized, without noticing, only he and I were left. I instinctively wanted to run away, but he blocked me. Grace, am I some kind of monster? You pretend not to know me, and now you want to run? He gripped my hand tightly, the warmth of his palm piercing my skin and searing my vulnerable soul. Seeing the people coming and going around us, I was desperate to shake him off. He seemed to read my thoughts. Instead of letting go, he pulled me into a small room. Art supplies were scattered everywhere, and an unfinished painting rested on an easel. Before I could look closely, I was pulled into an embrace. Grace, are you spacing out again? Then I'll have to punish you. With that, he leaned in close. I felt his breath draw nearer, momentarily flustered, but at the last second, I turned my face away. Liam, that day was an accident. Can you just forget about it? There was no response for a long time. When I turned to look, Liam's lips brushed against mine by accident. I instinctively recoiled, but he held me in a tight grip, unable to move. It was then I noticed that the usually smiling young man had a darkened face, his eyes swirling with unspoken emotions. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Is it because of your ex-husband? Or because you hate me? His rapid-fire questions flustered me. Because of Marcus? My connection with Liam was partly driven by my anger towards Marcus, but my decision to cut ties completely had nothing to do with Marcus. I looked up at Liam, at his beautiful, often smiling eyes, and felt a pang of sadness. How could such a good person be disliked? It was just that I felt he had a bright future, and shouldn't be entangled with Omeon like me, who was full of trouble. I couldn't bring myself to say something I didn't mean, so we simply stood there, facing each other. Finally, he seemed to accept the reality, letting out a deep sigh. "Alright," he said, "if you don't want to see me again, then so be it." With that, he released me and turned to leave the room. I instinctively wanted to stop him, but my outstretched hand eventually retracted, guided by reason. It was then that I had a chance to examine the cluttered art studio. Knowing Eleanor's habits, I guessed that the owner of this studio was likely Liam, who had just left. The painting on the easel came fully into view, a side profile, face flushed, slumped over a bar counter, clearly unconscious. I was a little shocked. Who else could that person be but me? I stood frozen, marveling at Liam's skill and simultaneously stunned by the emotion his painting conveyed. He actually felt. Reflecting on my own actions, which closely resembled those of a heartless scoundrel, my guilt towards him deepened even further. I rushed out of the room, searching everywhere for Liam, but couldn't find him. A feeling of loss spontaneously arose in my heart, but soon I felt it was for the best. We were meant to be two parallel lines that never intersected. Distraught, I walked through the gallery, gradually losing the desire to appreciate the paintings. And the uninvited guest that followed made my mood even worse. 8. Is this painting by your sugar daddy's ex-wife? Sugar daddy? That's my fiancé. A familiar voice entered my ears. It was Tiffany, standing right in front of one of my old paintings. That one's already been phased out. I'm Mrs. Marcus now. That painting was one I created shortly after our wedding, meant to commemorate our relationship. Marcus named it true. It had been on display at Professor's Gallery ever since, and though people made offers, I could never bring myself to sell it. This painting is really good. It looks like you two had a genuinely strong connection. Her friend looked at my painting, her face filled with admiration, while Tiffany's face was etched with hatred. True, whatever. No matter how good it was, it'll all be mine now. Mr. Marcus has already placed the order. Whether it's the painting or the person, they're mine. But someone else's true is such an eyesore, isn't it? Why don't we just destroy it? With that, she pulled a bottle of water from her bag and splashed it onto the painting. I instinctively rushed forward and was drenched. Everyone around was startled by the sudden incident. Tiffany's face showed surprise, but upon seeing me, her expression quickly turned to mockery. "Oh, isn't this my ex-wife, Grace? You claim you've moved on from Mr. Marcus, but seeing you rush in to save this painting, I'm almost touched. What a shame." Tiffany deliberately smoothed her hair, revealing the sparkling diamond ring on her finger. "Now, Mr. Marcus loves me." I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. "Is that so? If you're so confident in Marcus's love for you, why do you keep bothering me again and again? Isn't it because you're afraid I'll come back, and then Marcus will have no room for you in his heart? After all, you're just a kept woman on the side." Tiffany, her schemes exposed by me, lost her triumphant composure. Her exquisitely beautiful face slowly contorted into a snarl. "Grace, what right do you, a loser, have to strut around in front of me? Mr. Marcus told me more than once in bed how terrible and boring you are. Can't you accept your status as a discarded wife?" Her taunts made me burst out laughing completely. "What exactly makes you so confident in Marcus's love? Is it just your skills in bed?" Tiffany was utterly enraged by me. She charged at me wildly. I instinctively stepped back, but unexpectedly found myself falling into a broad, comforting embrace. The charging Tiffany was swiftly pushed away. From above, a cold voice ordered, "Security, remove T. He troublemaker." Tiffany was still yelling, "Why? I bought the painting, so I'm your client. What right do you have to kick me out?" "Because I'm the organizer of the gallery. I'll sell if I want to, and I won't if I don't." I looked up at Liam's chin, surprised by his sharp, cold demeanor. Ever since I first met him, he'd always been a sweet, loyal puppy-like boyfriend, except for being a bit dominant in bed. I'd never seen him like this before. "Grace? What are you doing here?" Marcus suddenly appeared, frowning at me, seemingly very displeased by my presence. 9. The moment Tiffany saw Marcus, she pounced on him as if he were a lifeline. "Marcus, they're all bullying me." Tiffany, her eyes glistening with tears, ran into Marcus's arms. Marcus's gaze at me turned even colder, and he immediately demanded, "Grace, why are you haunting me? Apologize." He wanted me to apologize without asking for any explanation. I couldn't help but sneer. Just as I was about to speak, someone else beat me to it. "Mr. Marcus, right? When you're demanding an explanation, do you never ask for the full story?" Marcus stared at me silently, as if waiting for me to speak, but wouldn't give me that chance. She quickly cut in to complain. "I just commented on Grace's painting a few times, and Grace got angry and wanted to hit me. Marcus, you have to stand up for me." I was so enraged by her blaming me instead that I almost laughed. Liam was about to speak up for me, but I stopped him. My matters, I have to handle myself. Marcus, if you want to buy the painting, then treat it with respect. If it's just to desecrate someone else's hard work, then please, spare us the trouble. When did I? Marcus looked at my disheveled state, and a gleam of excitement actually flickered in his eyes. Since it's something I bought, it's none of your business, unless… Grace, you're not still pining for me, are you? I was almost driven to death by his shamelessness. Liam whispered, Grace, if you don't want to sell it, I can help you. My heart stirred. Looking at the painting, once full of my hopes for love, now I only found it ironic. Suddenly, everything clicked. You're right, I was indeed meddling. Mr. Marcus, please transfer the money as soon as possible. I turned away resolutely, without a trace of lingering attachment, and thus didn't see Marcus's grim expression. Liam pulled me back to the art studio and took out a tissue to wipe the water off me. Seeing how carefully he was acting, I stopped his hand. You've seen me. My life is already full of gloom and trouble. It's not something you should get involved with. Hearing my words, Liam pressed my hand down. I saw you, but the Grace I saw is still brilliant and full of color. My heart skipped a beat, and the man in front of me stood up and led me to a new exhibition room. I stared at the paintings in surprise, realizing that all the artworks here shared a common protagonist, me. You. Liam's eyes curved, just like they used to. This is my secret. Do you really not remember me? The kid in the stairwell of Metropolitan Hospital 8 years ago, you were the one who lit up his life, weren't you? When I saw the painting titled Hope in his hand, I suddenly realized that his face overlapped with someone deep in my memory. 8 years ago, Marcus was heartbroken, drank too much, and got into a car accident. The hospital contacted me. As someone who had a secret crush on him, I was both worried and heartbroken when I heard the news, so I rushed to the hospital to take care of him. It was because of the time we spent together then that we fell in love. While was hospitalized, I was at the hospital, and I met a kid who had injured his leg and could no longer play soccer. The kid sat in the stairwell every day, enveloped in despair. One time, he asked me, Grace, why is this world so dark? So dark that I can barely see the road ahead. His words startled me. Worried about him, I would sit with him for a while every day. Even though he was silent most of the time, I always felt that talking more about the good things in life might touch him. Later, when Marcus recovered and was discharged, I wanted to say goodbye to the kid but couldn't find him. I asked the doctor to give him my painting, hoping it would bring some color and hope into his life. Grace, you lit up my life, and it's because of you that I studied art. You are my muse. He took my hand and pressed it against his chest. I clearly felt his heart beating. When I first saw you at the Poet, I recognized you instantly. Do you know how surprised I was? I was even more surprised when you suggested hiring me for a night. Although hiding my identity was wrong, I hope you understand my true feelings. Grace, I like you. I'm willing to protect you for a lifetime. Will you be my girlfriend? The boy's confession was direct and passionate. It would be a lie to say I wasn't moved. However, having just failed in a relationship, I didn't have the courage to accept his feelings. I'm sorry, and fleeing in haste were the only responses I could manage. But clearly, I had underestimated Liam's persistence. 11 From that day on, he frequently appeared around me. I cruelly tried to drive him away, but he brought Professor as a shield. Professor said I should come ask you for advice more often when I have nothing to do. Grace, you wouldn't mind, would you? Annoyed, I contacted Professor to confirm. However, Professor said, yes, that's right. You're alone, and he can look after you when he's free. Use him however you like, he doesn't mind. The man in front of me was beaming, clearly not minding, even seeming quite pleased. At first, I tried to intentionally find fault to make him retreat in the face of difficulty. But no matter what I said, he always smiled and agreed obediently, leaving me helpless. Eventually, I tacitly accepted his presence. With him around, my life seemed to regain its light. I had to admit that I'd fallen for this direct and passionate younger man. Our relationship grew closer, and we would occasionally joke and play around. But whenever he tried to take things further, I would involuntarily pull back. Even so, he was still willing to protect me, which made me feel very guilty. Until that day, a phone call broke the balance. Liam's face unusually darkened. I thought something was wrong, but then he said, "Your ex-husband is coming to see you?" I nodded, but his eyes visibly reddened. "Are you two getting back together?" Of course not. I really wanted to say that, but what came out was, kids shouldn't meddle in adult affairs. Liam's eyes visibly reddened, tears welling up constantly, like a big dog afraid of being abandoned. Even with a face full of grievance, he said, "Okay, I respect your decision." Liam left, and my world seemed to quiet down again, losing its light. The feeling of loss in my heart became uncontrollable, and with it came a longing for Liam. I was startled by my own thoughts. Without realizing it, he had already entered my heart and taken root. After much thought, I finally acknowledged my feelings and decided to face them. But now that I had upset him and driven him away, I figured he'd need to be coaxed a little. I packed my things and prepared to go out to find Liam. As soon as I went downstairs, I saw an uninvited guest, Marcus, holding flowers. Grace. 12. I instinctively frowned. Didn't I make it clear to you on the phone? Why are you here? Marcus suddenly knelt on one knee. Grace, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me just this once. That woman deliberately seduced me, that's why I lost my composure. Now she's gone, let's go back to how things were. I promised I'd love you forever, and that promise hasn't changed. As he spoke, he took out a wedding ring, the very same one he had thrown away at the county's office entrance. You gave up on me too decisively, so I acted out of spite. I promise it won't happen again. Grace, P.L. Please give me another chance. I reached out and took the ring he was holding up. His face lit up with surprise, and he kept apologizing and making promises. I then turned and tossed it into the bushes. Marcus, just as you said yourself, we're over. There's no going back. And you were the one who gave up on me first, which is why I don't want you. Next time you come demanding an explanation, figure out the real reason first, and stop blaming me unfairly. Rushing to find Liam, I was in no mood to listen to his nonsense. I walked past him and headed out, but Marcus grabbed me tightly. Grace, please. I really know I was wrong. If you don't believe me, hit me. I had underestimated Marcus's nerve. I struggled to break free, but couldn't. Just as I was at my wit's end, a hand appeared and pulled him away from me. Are you deaf? I looked at Liam in surprise. Why are you back? Liam retorted stubbornly. I've worked so hard for so long, why should I give her up to him? We'll have to compete to see who wins. Ignoring, I stood on my tiptoes, wrapped my arms around Liam, and kissed his chin. You win, you always win. Liam immediately puffed up with pride. Before we went inside, he didn't forget to show off to Marcus. See? Loser. Marcus laughed, looking dejected, but Liam immediately blocked my view. He's gone, why are you still looking? Was saying I won just an excuse to get rid of him? Liam looked jealous, but deliberately lowered his head. I laughed at his childishness, then stood on my tiptoes and kissed his lips. You win, I said you win. Liam cupped my head and deepened the kiss. I'm still mad, that's not enough. Soon after, Tiffany unexpectedly visited me once. I thought she was here to throw a tantrum, and Liam specifically stayed by my side, afraid she might harm me in a rage. But she was unusually calm. Today, I just want to ask you one question. After what he did to you, don't you hate him? I glanced at her indifferently. I did hate him, not anymore. You made that phone call on purpose, didn't you? Tiffany felt guilty but stubbornly asked, how did you guess? I chuckled softly. Because you still don't know Marcus well enough. Marcus cares most about his reputation, he wouldn't mess around and ruin his image as a devoted lover. So if you hadn't exposed it, he would have kept it hidden from me. Then why didn't you just pretend you didn't know? He would have stayed by your side forever then? Because his deliberate concealment made me feel even more disgusted. Did you leave him? My direct question made Tiffany's face look rather unpleasant, but she lifted her chin. I'm the one who didn't want him anymore. You're right, he's a disgusting person. He's always wanting more than what he has, and now he wants to trample on my sincerity. I'll make sure he pays the price. A few days later, news broke online that Marcus had issues with his conduct, and videos of his promiscuity were made public. It wasn't hard to guess it was Tiffany's doing. His reputation was ruined, and his company's stock plummeted. Looking at the news now, I felt nothing, only a pang of regret for his outcome. What? You're heartbroken for him again? The jealous one pounced on me, whining playfully. In my mind, I couldn't help but add, and a headache. Every time Marcus made headlines, Liam would seize the opportunity to harass me. I patiently coaxed him, heartbroken for what? I'm only heartbroken for myself. He, of course, understood what I meant and nuzzled into my neck. Oh? Why is that? I pressed down his mischievous hand and said helplessly, because I have a big jealous baby at home. Liam chuckled softly. Then do you like it? Yes, I like it, so much that I don't want to let go for a lifetime, just like the growing together painting he gave me. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.